Hello everyone, and welcome to the CALDO webinar for today. I'm starting a couple of minutes before the time, just to give you an overview of what will happen today. So today we will be focusing our presentation on the admission process for graduate programs in Canada. So for programs of master's degrees and PhDs, so mestrados, doutorados, maestrias e doctorados. This presentation is being done for all of our countries for which we have agreements, so countries from Central and South America. So because of that, we will speak in English because we will have people from probably from Brazil and other people from Spanish-speaking countries. So I will speak in English, and the way that things are going to take place is basically the following. I will be doing a presentation for around 25 minutes. After that, you will be able to ask any questions that you may have concerning the admission process and the application process. So, by using the chat box that some of you have already used for the greetings, you can write questions in English, Spanish, or Portuguese as you prefer, and I will be going through the questions that you will write there, and I will answer them in the order that they were asked. So I will only answer the questions at the end. So please, if you write any questions while I'm presenting, I will still answer them, but not when you're typing them. So I will answer only at the end. So the presentation for today will not focus on the characteristics of the CALDO universities or presenting the universities. That's the topic for other webinars. And if you visit our YouTube channel, you will find a lot of webinars about our universities. So for today, we will focus about what students need to do to apply to master and PhD programs. So let's start the presentation. And for those of you that are not familiar, I will start with a brief introduction of what is CALDO. So CALDO is an office that exists in Canada, and that was created by four universities initially, and afterwards it expanded to 9. So right now, CALDO is comprised of 9 different universities. All of these universities are among the top 15 universities in Canada, and one of the characteristics of all of them is that they are called research-intensive universities, meaning that they are universities that offer research in both master and PhD level in most of the areas of knowledge. You will find programs at our universities from social sciences, humanities, engineering, health sciences, and so on. One of the important things to realize about the CALDO office is that we are not an agency. So CALDO is part of the universities. The universities created this office. So we are not a private entity or an agent. Therefore, we have access to our universities as any office inside the university has access to its own university, because we were created by each of them. One of the things that you're probably wondering is, what are the specificities of Canada that are interesting for me to know and that make me want to study there? One of the good things about the country is that the country has a lot of focus on multiculturalism and receiving people from different places. As you are probably aware, Canada is one of the most multicultural countries in the world, and you see that in the cities, you see that in the university campus. So you will have colleagues from Asia, colleagues from Africa, colleagues from Europe, from South America, in the campus and in the cities that our universities are located. One of the great things about the universities is that because they are research intensive, they have a lot of funding to conduct research. So you will find state-of-the-art laboratories, you will find professors from all over the world, you will find colleagues from all over the world. So there's a lot of expertise within the campus of the universities. And the fact that the laboratories are well funded makes students have access to the latest technology, to materials during their laboratory experiments. One of the main things that students from Latin America mention when they get to our universities is the fact that they have access to much more materials than they would have in their own country. So in some cases, they have access to specific equipment just for them, while if they were in their own country, they would have to share that equipment with 5, 6 other students. One other feature of Canada and the education that the universities provide is that you can find universities in English or in French. Canada is a bilingual country, so there are two official languages, English and French. And depending on where you're studying, and depending on your language of preference, you can study in either English or French. There's actually one particular university from the CALDO group, the University of Ottawa, that allows you to study in both languages. For those of you that are more interested in getting to know our universities, visit our website, so www.caldo.ca, and in the top menu, click our universities, and you will be able to read about each of them. So this webinar won't focus on the university, so I won't be talking about that. The Canadian academic system is pretty similar to what you will find in your home country. So after you have completed your bacharelado, you will be able to go into a master's degree. So if you have a bacharelado from your home country, you are eligible to apply to a master's degree in one of the CALDO universities. The master's degrees in our universities are of two kinds. You have two different types of master's degrees. You have the research-based master, like the name says, it involves doing research, and it's a master's degree that usually takes 2 years. In the first year, you go to classes. In the second year, you are just doing research. These are also called thesis-based masters. And you have course-based masters that are master degrees for which there is no thesis. There might be a small project, but the second year, it's not just for research. You will still have classes in the second year. So you have classes in the first and in the second year. This course-based master or professional master is something that is suitable for people that want to gain technical skills instead of research skills. So for example, imagine that you're an engineer and you want to know more about mining engineering, for example. But you're not overly concerned to do a thesis because you don't want to go into the academic world. So you can opt for the course-based master, which is just attending classes and gaining knowledge through going to classes with different professors and listening about different techniques. Once you have your master's degree, and if you have a master's degree from your own country, you can also consider applying to a PhD. The PhD is usually between 4 and 5 years. And the PhD, like you will find in your own country, is a degree that it's mostly focused on research. So during the first and second year, you have some classes, but you will be doing research basically from the first year up to the end of the PhD. So the PhD is much more research intensive than any other program before it. For the PhD, it's essential that you are able to get a supervisor, a professor that is willing to work with you. And that's one of the things that we will talk during this presentation more in a couple of slides. The CALDO office, like I mentioned, is part of the universities, so we were created by the universities. And because of that, all of our services are free. You don't need to pay anything to use our services. And what are our services? One of the main advantages that we give to anyone that reaches out to us is information on the programs that are available at our universities. So let's imagine that you're interested in doing, for example, a PhD in education, and you don't have any idea of what are the options in Canada or how to what are the documents that you need, what are the requirements. So if you contact CALDO, we are able not to give you information on which of the 9 universities offer the program in education, the PhD in education, but also where you can find information on the documents that you need, the type of admission requirements that the program demands from all of the candidates, and other elements that you might feel that you require for making an informed decision on where to study. One other additional feature that we offer is the option to contact the universities to see if supervisors might be interested in working with you. There's a dedicated CALDO tool that it's basically an online profile that each candidate can create. And once again, this is all free. And if all the information is populated, so if all the documents are provided, and we will talk more about the documents in the next slides, the university can reach out to supervisors, so to professors that you would like to work with during your master or PhD. One important thing is that this platform is only available for candidates that consider to bring financial support from their own country, meaning that you need to be considering to apply to a scholarship or to some kind of financial assistance from your home country that will enable you to do your program abroad. In our website, there is a section called Steps to Apply. In that section, there is summary of the 4 steps that each candidate needs to go through to apply to a graduate program. And there's a step there called Finding Financing. And in there, you can see all of our partners in Latin America for scholarships for master's and PhD programs per country. So, just a summary of why you should consider a CALDO university. So one of the things that they all offer is access to state-of-the-art research facilities and professors and programs. All of our universities offer programs in most areas of knowledge. Between masters and PhDs, our universities offer around 3,000 programs. So there is a lot of options. The CALDO services are totally free, so you can use them anytime, anywhere that you want. You can start using them in December 2017, and eventually you will only make a decision next year, so it doesn't matter. You can send us an email whenever you need our services, and we are here to assist you in whatever we can. And one other feature of our universities is that all of them provide also language. They all have language schools. So if you are interested in improving your language skills, you can also do it through the CALDO universities, which is something that some candidates are looking for because they prefer to improve their language skills first and then start their master or PhD program. So let's start with being more focused on the application process and on the admission. One thing that you need to consider is your previous studies. So what kind of studies you have. To apply to a master's degree, you need to have the equivalent of a Canadian 4-year bachelor, which means that you need to have a bacharelado or a licenciatura that took at least 4 years in your country. And if you have that from a university that is recognized in your own country, you are able to apply to a master's degree in Canada. If you already have a master's degree from your own country, once again from a recognized university, you are able to apply to a PhD if you have a research-based master's. So remember that I talked a while ago about research and course-based masters. So for you to apply to a PhD, it's essential that you have a research master's background, because the professor will be interested in knowing what experience do you have with doing research, with writing articles or publishing articles, something that is related to doing research. So please make sure that if you're interested in following PhD programs in the future in a Canadian university, you will need to consider doing a master with research. One thing that you will hear a lot is the GPA. So the GPA is nothing more than the average of your previous studies. So when you did your bacharelado, what the Canadian University will look for is the average of your last 2 years of study. So if you did your bacharelado, they will look at the last 2 years. Sorry, if you're applying to a master, they will look at the last years of your bacharelado. If you're applying to a PhD, they will look at the master GPA. If by any chance you didn't have enough credits in the master, they will probably need to go to the last year of the bacharelado just to make sure that they have enough credits that they can do an average. So as you can see, the GPA in Canada usually is calculated on a 4-point scale. In most of the countries, you don't have the same scale. However, you see on the table that there is a sort of a conversion of the GPA for the different countries. And once again, this is a general conversion. The overall idea is that you will need to have more than 70% average in your 2 previous years of study. Okay, so you'll need to go to your histórico de notas, to your certificado de notas, and see if the average of your last 2 years was around 70% or higher. If it was lower, it might be difficult to gain admission because programs usually require higher than 70%. So it's always good to have a notion of which sort of GPA you have to see if you meet or are close to meeting what is required by the programs in Canada. So this is the GPA. Language. One other thing that you will need to meet is language requirements. As you understand, all of the programs here are taught in English or in French, and it's likely that in your home university, if you studied in your home country, you did not study in English or in French. So the university here needs to have some sort of assurance that you have the minimum level of knowledge in the language to be able to follow the professor, to do your essays, to write your articles. And for that, they use 2 main tests, the TOEFL and the IELTS. One of the things that you will notice in the admission requirements of the programs is that they will vary by program. So different programs will have different TOEFL scores or different IELTS scores. So for example, if you're applying to and this is an example, if you're applying to a master program in computer science, they might require a TOEFL IBT 100, so the score of 100. If you're applying to a civil engineering program, they might require a TOEFL IBT of 88. So not all programs will require the same grades. So it's important that you make yourself familiar with what is the level of language that you need for the particular program that you're interested. The TOEFL, it's one of the most common tests, and it needs to be the IBT version, so the internet-based test. There are other versions of the TOEFL. One is the ITP, that's not accepted. You can do the paper version, but that's not very common right now because most of the candidates now do the computer version. So make sure that you register for the TOEFL IBT. If you're registering for the IELTS, you should be registering for the academic version, IELTS Academic. And the scores in IELTS are, if I'm not mistaken, in a scale of 0 to 9, while the score from the TOEFL is on a scale of, if I'm not mistaken, 0 to 120. The French-speaking universities, mainly Laval and Ottawa, in some cases, they do not refer specifically to the level of French. So they might just say that the candidate needs to demonstrate that he has sufficient knowledge of the language. Obviously, this is very abstract. And one of the advices that I will give you is if you're applying to a French-speaking program and you're not able to find the language requirement, send me an email to the CALDO office, and I will give you my contact at the end so that we can verify which is the level of language that the program requires. So this is another requirement. We already talked about the GPA, the language. Now let's talk about other tests that might be required. One of the tests that people usually ask about is, do I need to do the GRE or do I need to do the GMAT? So at our universities, most programs do not need these tests, which is great because these tests are very intense, they are very difficult, and usually people prefer not to do them. And for our universities, for most programs, you don't need to do it. However, some programs do require them. And once again, this varies by university, so don't think that what I will be mentioning here is the same for everyone. But some programs that might require these are computer science, psychology, physics, and then the programs related to business. And these almost all universities will ask you the GRE or the GMAT. So MBAs, Masters Management, PhDs in Management. If you are applying to these business programs, then the GRE or the GMAT is usually always required. For other areas, you will need to make sure that you verify the tests that are required for admission. Usually, it's mostly just the language tests, but it might be that you're applying to a particular program that requires the GRE or the GMAT. Deadlines. It's extremely important that you don't miss the deadlines. The deadlines are mostly more important for master programs than for PhDs. For PhDs, there's a bit more flexibility, and there's also flexibility when you're applying for a master or a PhD to a scholarship from your own country. So one of the things that you will notice is some scholarships don't have the same deadlines as the programs. So when that's the case, you can reach out to the university and let them know that you need an admission letter by a specific date because you're applying to a scholarship. And in most cases, they will be flexible enough to provide you the admission letter so that you can apply to the scholarship. In Canada, most programs start in two particular times of the year. September, which is considered to be the fall term, so it's the termo de outono, or the winter term, termo de inverno. That starts in January. For the fall term, so start in September, the candidates will need to apply to a specific deadline. And once again, what I'm mentioning here is just an example, because I'm mentioning that international candidates May the 1st. This is just an example because all programs have different deadlines. Okay, so most programs the deadline is up to March. Okay, so it's usually between December and March to start in September. To start in January, most programs are during the spring, so up to May or April, depending. However, there might be programs that have extended deadlines that you can still take more time to apply. However, my suggestion is that if you're thinking on applying to a program, make sure that the first thing that you see is the deadline and make sure that you have that in your calendar as the date for which you need to submit the application. Now let's talk about supervisors. Like I mentioned before, for PhD programs, it's essential that you talk to a supervisor. The supervisor is an important piece for any admission for PhD in any area. This will be the person that will be working with you for the next 4 or 5 years. So it will be extremely important that you will try to find supervisors that are doing research in the area of your interest, or else they won't be very interested in working with you. Usually, the program will specify when it's a master if a supervisor is required before admission or not. But for PhDs, it's always required. There's no questions for PhDs, only for masters. Some programs do, others don't. One of the things that you need to confirm is the information on the areas of specialization that the program offers. So let's imagine that we are talking about the program of biology. The universities will offer you a wide variety of specializations in biology. They might offer you biochemistry, biophysical, cell biology, ecology, whatever. Several areas. And each of those areas will have specific professors that are associated with them. So if you're interested in cell biology, you will need to find someone that is doing research in that area. You are not going to look for someone that's doing research in ecology if you're interested in cell biology, because it doesn't make any sense. Once you find the supervisor, it's time to contact him and to gather some documents. We will talk about details on contacting the supervisors, but before that, let's talk a bit about documents that you require and a summary of some of the things that we have talked so far. So, documents that are required for almost all applications. Transcripts. So, the transcripts are the certificado de notas, histórico de notas, that the university will use to calculate your GPA. These documents need to be provided by your home university in their original language, and then you need to translate them either by the university directly translating the document or requesting a translator from your home country to do it. There is no list of certified translators by CALDO universities or anything like that. As long as it's a certified translator from your home country, it's fine. Then you also need the language test, the tests that we talked about, the TOEFL IBT or the IELTS academic. Then you need the statement of research. The statement of research is a document of 1 to 2 pages where you will talk about your research interests. So we will talk a bit about the statement of research and some of these documents in the next slides. Your CV, so your academic and eventually your professional experience so far, and reference contacts to be submitted online. For references, most of the application platforms of our university will ask for emails of professors that you had in the past. Okay, so it's not very common now to work with reference letters. So what will happen is you will provide, in most cases, an email, and the person will be emailed, and it will be invited to fill out a form to provide more information about yourself. Okay, let's look at the transcript. So the transcript is basically a document similar to the one that you see on the screen. In Brazil, you might know it as Histórico de Notas. In the Spanish-speaking countries, Certificado de Notas. I believe by the picture it's clear for you what the document is. And basically, the document needs to be issued by your home university. And it needs to be, like I mentioned, translated into English if it's not in English. English or French. Statement of research. There's a lot of information here. I am not going to go through all these bullet points. You will find all of this in our website. But I will just summarize the statement of research as being a 1 to 2 pages document where you will sell your skills to the professor. So like I mentioned, you need a supervisor, and the supervisor needs to be interested in working with you. Imagine the following. Someone is browsing their emails and they have emails from 20 students that are interested in working with that professor. That professor will make a decision based on the preliminary information that the student gives him or her. So it's extremely important that you will make sure that your statement of research is appealing to the person that is reading it. It is related to the person that you write to. So if, like I mentioned before, if you're writing to someone from cell biology, you need to tell them why you feel that they are awesome at cell biology. So you need to make them feel special. That's basically it. And you need to tell them why you want to work with them and what is your idea for research. So you don't need to have a project. You just need to tell them, to give them a bit of an overview of what you would like to do for the research. One of the things that it's important is don't work with standard tests that you find online. So if you look for statement of research or statement of interest online, you will find a lot of templates. Do not copy paste things and just change your name. Doesn't make any sense. The professor will know it. They will not pay attention to your application, and it's the end basically. So make sure that you do personalized letters, that you put your personal touch in each communication that you do with professors. The CV. The Canadian academic CV is something very simple. The CV is also something that you might find the information in our website. And basically, you just need to put your name and contact information at the top. So no address, no home address, No information about who your parents are, or if you're single or you're married. Doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What you need is your name, email, and eventually a phone number or a Skype ID. Then you need to put information on education and on research. And after that, you can put stuff like professional experience or other things that you think could be relevant. But please remember the following. You are applying to something that it's academic. And if it's academic, you should focus on academic abilities. You should focus on what you studied, the type of research that you did before, if you have published anything, if you have experience teaching, and so on. One excellent source of information is our website. So our website has a lot of information about what I was just mentioning. If you go to our website, in the top bar, you will find something called Tools to Apply. You will see there. Tools to Apply. In the Tools to Apply, that's where you will find information on statement of research, on the CV, and other how to contact the supervisor. One other excellent tool that we have is this button here. This red button here. It's not very easy to work with this online pencil. That's called Steps to Apply. The steps to apply are basically this screen that you see here, where you will have the 4 main steps that everyone needs to go through to apply to one of our programs. Very important. If you have any question, write me an email. This is my email, graduate.coordinator@caldo.ca. You can write your email in English. You can write your email in Spanish, in Portuguese, as you prefer. And let me know what are you looking for and what is your goal in terms of studying in Canada. So right now, let's just move on to the question and answer period. And like I mentioned before, you have the chat box there. So you should probably see it on, I don't know if it's on your left or on your right, because your screen is different than mine. But there's a chat box there. And you can write any questions that you may have in the chat box, and I will try to answer as best as possible. We will have around 15 minutes for questions and answers, so feel free to use that time to ask questions that you may have. If I don't answer your question, send me an email. Okay, so send me an email. My name is Paulo. So just say, hey, Paulo, I've heard you in the webinar. It was great, but I have this question for you. And I will be more than happy to help you and to try to assist you with everything I can. So Paula Nunez is asking, the supervisor is just for PhD. Hi, Paula. So the supervisor, it's not just for the PhD. So like I mentioned before, if you're applying, just maximize this so that we can all see. If you're applying to a master with research, you will also need supervisor. However, some masters with research don't need the supervisor during the admission process. So when you apply, in some cases, you don't need to have the supervisor. But once again, the challenge is that all of our universities and all the programs have different rules. So what we need to figure it out is if the program that you're interested requires a supervisor or not. So if it requires, then we need to follow through with a supervisor from the university. But I would say that if you're interested in doing a master's degree with research, is always a good idea to look for supervisors when you're looking for the programs, because in the end you will always need to choose a supervisor either at the start of the program or later on. So it's very good to have an idea of which professors might be available to work with you. Harold is asking if there's any kind of financial support for language studies. Not really, Harold. Most of our universities have language schools, but there's no scholarships, no becas for language programs. But you have different types of programs. So, for example, you have the summer intensive language programs, for which you have like 3 or 4 weeks of really intensive English or French during 6 hours a day, and you will be immersed in an English environment, because when you're walking outside, you will hear the language. Everyone is speaking the language. So it's an option if you don't have, first of all, a lot of time to be in another country and a lot of funds, because obviously the longer you stay in a foreign country, the more expensive it gets. Christian is asking, does my B2 certificate of French is valid for language requirements? Christian, it may be. So it depends on the type of program that you're applying. So Laval and Ottawa, that are the only two universities that will provide programs in French, they are pretty much flexible in the type of French certificates that they accept. So if you send me an email about the program that you're interested in and mention that question of the B2 certificate, we can confirm that. Antonio is saying, I'm not sure how the GPA is calculated. Please, can you explain again? Okay, Antonio, the GPA, even myself, I'm not sure how they calculate it, because each university uses a specific formula. But the main idea is the following. They all have this sort of general rule. If your average of the last 2 years of study is higher than 70%, okay, then you are close to most of the minimum requirements that the universities have. Okay. However, some of our universities have equivalencies tables for people from other countries. So if you go to our website, under that button that I was just mentioning, tools to apply, you are able to find a section called International Equivalencies, and you will find there for countries, for each country, which is usually the average that you require. But you will notice that for most countries, it's above 70%. So if it's a scale from 0 to 10, it will be from 7 up. Or if it's from 0 to 20, it will likely be from 14 or up. So it's basically this the logic. However, I don't have there's no formula that I can give you to calculate the GPA exactly as the universities do, because that's something that they do on their own. So Joanna, you're mentioning that you just joined the webinar. That's fine. All of the people that register for the webinar will receive the recordings, so you will be able to listen and watch the webinar over and over again if you really liked it. But definitely you will have it for visualization whenever you're available. Diana, does the research statement only require for PhD? No, Diana. The research statement is required for anyone that is looking for a supervisor. Okay, so if you're looking for a supervisor for a master's degree, you also need the statement of research. So there's a question here. If someone can I be sponsored by CONACYT? And do you have universities offer PhD in gerontology? Babatunde, you can be sponsored by CONACYT. I believe you are from Mexico. And I believe that gerontology, some of our universities offer, but you will need to send me an email, because I don't know all of this information just by memory. So send me an email, because I'm pretty sure that I've seen universities offering something in that area. I don't know if it's a PhD or if it's a master's degree, but we can definitely look into that. Juan Carlos, is there any chance to study a direct PhD after finishing undergraduate studies? So Juan Carlos, in theory, there is, but in reality, it's hard. So unless the candidate is really extraordinary, the professor might accept them directly into a PhD, but those cases are very rare. So if you're a student that had top grades, and if you are very skilled with research already, probably you have some chance. But if the professor doesn't see evidence that you have research experience, probably will require you to do a master program before. Cindy is asking, what is the minimum average of universities? Well, like I mentioned, Cindy, 70% it's probably the minimum. You won't find programs that will go much lower than that. However, if you send me an email with the programs that you are interested, I can give you a more precise idea. Alejandro is asking, when we apply for a PhD using the online tools, do these tools contact the supervisor for us? No, no, Alejandro. You and everyone, when you are applying, you already need to mention the professor that you have contacted or the professor that wants to work with you, and in some cases, you might even have to submit a letter from the supervisor saying that he will that he will work with you. So you need to do that before applying, because no one will do it for you. Cecilia, I have read the MA in U of Ottawa that I need to have 10 years of experience. That is work experience. Cecilia, if you are able to send me that particular program, I will appreciate, because I'm not familiar with that requirement of 10 years of experience. Eventually, I'm assuming that it's a master degree that might require one of those sort of executive master programs or something that requires some professional experience. Mariana is asking, what is the difference between a course-based and a thesis-based? So Mariana, that was explained at the beginning of the program, of the webinar, and I'm just gonna do a brief summary. The course-based master is a master that does not have research. So it's a master that it's basically going to classes during usually 2 years, 1 year and a half, and then you might need to do a small project. The thesis-based master is the master where you need to do a thesis. So the second year will always be a year for research, and that's the suitable master if you in the future you want to consider doing a PhD. Once again, you can review our webinar and look at that section, because we talked about that at the beginning. Also in our website under tools to apply, we have information on the difference between those two programs. Norma is asking, me gustaría saber si existe edad límite para seguir estudios de PhD, Master o doctorado. Norma, no, usually there is not, but there is something that the professors usually are a bit picky. If the candidate has finished, for example, is applying for a PhD and has finished his master's degree 20 years ago, probably won't have a lot of chances to get admission. The professors usually want to work with someone that is aware of what's happening in the research recently. So they feel that if the person has done his master's degree 20 years ago, then probably the person has not been up to date with research. However, during the statement of research, you can always show evidence of the opposite. So if you have kept yourself interested in scientific articles and everything, then you can let the professor know that. Ignacio, I wanted to ask if there are any internal scholarship at CALDO universities I can apply beside the ones provided by my own country. Yes, Ignacio, there are scholarships. So usually the way it works is the following: the supervisors are the ones that have the money, so they are like the ones that have the research funds that can finance students. And if the supervisor is really interested in working with you, we will probably tell you, okay, I can not only accept to work with you, but I can give you a scholarship for you to come here, which is awesome, because it's basically free study. You can come here and you can study for free. Another question. I have a 600 in the ITP. That one doesn't count. Yes, you're right. So the ITP, I don't know if you're from Brazil, Ignacio, but in Brazil, a lot of students have the ITP, which is a pity because the ITP is not accepted for graduate studies. You will need the IBT, EBT. Diego, in average, how long does it take to have confirmation from a university once I submitted my application? So Diego, there is no specific time, but I would say that if you're applying, so after the deadline has finished, or after you submit it, and if you need something, if you need a reply because you're applying to a scholarship, you can state that you will need to receive the admission letter by a specific date, and maybe they can accelerate your process. Okay. If you don't need that by a specific date, if you're just applying through the normal deadline, probably candidates will wait between 1 to 2 months. Let me see. So Norma is asking about financing. Que financia mis study studios? So for PhD studies, I'm just going to answer this generally. How does financing works? So for PhD studies, supervisors will likely not accept students that say, okay, I'll just go there and I'll pay for the whole PhD myself, because this is a very big risk. You know, it's 4 years abroad, or 4 or 5 years. It's a lot of money that you will need. You will need around $100,000 or something, just $1 million. Obviously, if you have the money, you can always show evidence of the professor that you can afford that. But in most cases, the professor either will need the student to bring a scholarship from their own country, or they will provide a scholarship from their own. You can even reach an agreement with the professor that you will pay the first year and they will pay the last 3. So it can be something like that. For master degrees, it's a bit more flexible. So if it's a course-based master's, you don't even have scholarships for those. So course-based masters or mestrado profesional, professional master, you don't have any financing for those. So you will need to bring your own. You will need to pay for that. For thesis-based masters, once again, there might be some financing because it involves research, and the professor might provide some financial assistance to the students. Once again, the professor will provide financial assistance if the student is very competitive. So if it's very talented, because you can imagine everyone is looking for scholarships. So you are looking for scholarships. People in China are looking for scholarships. People in India are looking for scholarships. So basically, there's a lot of competition there. So it's important that if your home country offers scholarship programs, see if you can apply to those, because that's a huge advantage. If the professor knows that you have a scholarship from your home country, he will be very happy. So and that will obviously make it a bit more easy to work with you, to accept you. Aurelio, does admission only consider finished studies? I'm currently studying a second major, but I'm planning to leave it to apply to a master's degree. I would like to know if it's so you can apply while you're still finishing your studies. However, if you're doing a 4-year program and you're on your 3rd year, you shouldn't be applying to a master program. So if you're close to finishing, yes, you can start applying. And once you have all the documents, you will submit the final documents, and only after that will a final decision be made. Sylvia is asking, can she find information on Canada government scholarships? So Sylvia, if you're interested in scholarships from Canada, most of them are provided by the professors. So the other scholarships that exist from Canada, usually the access to those are via the professors. So that's something that it's useful for everyone to know. Some of them are available via recommendation. So if you're really talented and if you're doing some breakthrough research, the professor might recommend you for a specific scholarship. So that's one of the good things here, is that there's a lot of opportunity for scholarships. So there's a lot of questions here. Let me see if I can get to all of these. Someone is asking here, sorry, let me just see the name, because there's an icon here that Luis is asking that his average is around 13. So Luis, if the program requires a 14, probably the chances that you will be admitted are not too high, because it depends on the other candidates. If all the other candidates have 14 or more, then everyone that has less than that will not be able to gain admission. However, depending on the program that you're interested, we can see if there's a lot of competition there or not. Alejandro, we need transcript only the certificate, or do we must the diplomas? No. you don't need to translate the diploma. The diploma doesn't matter. The diploma is just for you to put it in a frame, put it in your wall, and that's it. With the universities here, they don't need your diploma. Acknowledgements, not necessarily, because those will be the references. And constancias, I'm not sure what you mean by constancias. But usually you only need the certificate. So you only need the certificado de notas. Osvaldo, you did the TOEFL IBT more than 2 years ago, but I have just done the TOEFL ITP. Oh, Osvaldo, you should have done the IBT because the ITP, like I mentioned, is not accepted. So, and unfortunately, the IBT is it's only 2 years. After 2 years, they assume that you will unlearn the language. So, unfortunately, after the 2 years, you need to retake the test. It's like the yogurts. You cannot spend too much time without using it, or else it will just be ineligible to use. Andreas, what are your recommendations to do a letter of intention for master degree? So Andreas, there's in our website, there is under tools to apply, there is a lot of good information for the statement of research. So the slide that I just showed in this presentation has a lot of tips for you to write that statement of research. So just follow the instructions that are there, and I'm pretty sure that you can come up with a very good statement of research. If you have any questions, make sure to send me an email. Judy, is it necessary to contact the supervisor for an admission for a master in architecture? So Judy, it be. So if I'm not mistaken, 2 of our universities, so I know that Korea offers architecture, Waterloo also, Laval also. So these 3 universities, they will need to state if you need to contact the supervisor. We can look into that. You can send me an email and we can confirm that. Cecilia, oh, you're looking for the Master in Health Administration. Okay, Cecilia. Now I understand why they mentioned the 10 years. Yeah, those programs are under the business school. The business school is in some of their programs they want the candidates to have professional experience. And please note that business is usually the area where they require previous professional experience. The other areas not so much. But yes, if they are requiring the 10 years, you can justify if you have less than that. I'm pretty sure that if all the other things that you have are are competitive and are above what they require, that it's not because you don't have 10 years of experience that they will not accept you. So I feel very proud because I've answered all the questions that you asked so far, and we are still under the 1 hour that I had planned for the webinar. Let me just see something. There are some questions here that I haven't answered. So let me see if in the last 5 minutes there is something new. Do I need a TOEFL test if my undergrad and postgrad were in English? No. Babatunde, everyone, if you did your previous studies at the university in English, you don't need the TOEFL or the IELTS. Okay, so if you studied in an English-speaking university, you're good. You can just apply with your transcripts. Joanna, can I apply for PhD even if I haven't finished my master? Like I mentioned, Joanna, if you're in the last year, yeah. If you're in the first, it's too early for you to apply. You can start contacting professors or starting researching professors, but to apply, it's too early. Sylvia is asking if some of the CALDO universities changing English proficiency policies. Not likely, Joanna. Sorry, Sylvia. They will likely remain the next years, and these are things that usually don't change very often. Alejandro, oh, Constancias, okay, Alejandro, thank you. So it might be important to mention in your CV, Alejandro. So if you have articles, if you have scientific presentations, yes, you should mention them on your CV. Louise, are you planning to include University of British Columbia in the CALDO group? So new CALDO members, they can join, but it's not something that it's planned. So they might be joining in a few years. We don't know. If you're interested in mining engineering, like you very well mentioned, Queens and Alberta are excellent choices. McGill is also another option, but once again, it's not the CALDO member. Hello, I'm going to finish the master in July 2018. Well, do I apply to a PhD? So if it's in July of this year, of next year, you can start looking for programs as of now, Miguel. So you can start doing your research now, and you can start contacting professors, because if you want to apply for example, to start in September, you can even but to start in September you wouldn't have time. Sorry, because you will still need the visa. So the immigration visa will take you at least a month. So it will be too short. So you could apply in the best case scenario for January 2019. Okay. Osvaldo, I don't know when the results of the Dean Scholarship comes out. Virginia, you're mentioning that you're over 40. Virginia, it's not so much how old you are, but when was the last time that you studied? So if the last time that you went to school was 15 or 20 years ago, probably it will be hard for you to gain admission in a thesis-based master or in a PhD. However, if you're looking for a course-based master, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Oh, Virginia, sorry, I didn't notice your last post. So you gained your master in May 2016. Well, then, if that's the case, it was recently. So maybe you're able to have some professors that could be interested in working with you. Joanna, and this will be the last question that I will be replying for today. Everything else, please send me emails. I'm more than happy, like I said, to answer to any questions that you may have. For the PhD, this is any specific deadline. So Joanna, like I mentioned, all programs have different deadlines, unfortunately. However, most of them are to start in September, are between December and March. Okay, so right now is when the deadlines start to be more critical, because that's where the deadlines are approaching. So there will be most of them within the first 3 months of the year if you want to study in September. Okay, so one thing important for all of you, you will be receiving tomorrow the the video of this presentation, so that you can go back and listen and eventually review some of the information that we talked here. My email is the one that you will see on the last slide, so graduate.coordinator@caldo.ca. You will be receiving an email from my own email, so you can just reply to it. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and make sure that if you have any questions, send it to us. Our services are entirely free. Our services, and this will answer your question, Luis, what are the benefits of applying through CALDO? So CALDO, when you contact CALDO, you're not applying to the university, you're gathering information about the university. The application is always done through the university website, and we are here just to make your decision easier and to guide you. Okay, so you will not be applying through CALDO. CALDO is here to support you. Make sure that you go to our website, check it out, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be more than happy. If next week we will have a webinar on the same day at the same time about living in Canada. If you're interested about how wonderful it is to live in Canada, log in, register. I will be the one presenting, so it will probably be useful if you're considering coming here. So if we don't communicate in the meantime, Happy Christmas, Feliz Natal, Feliz Navidad to everyone, and if you need anything from Caldo, we're here for whatever you need. Thank you so much. Take care.